Out in the depths of the North Atlantic Ocean, somewhere between the countries of Greenland and Iceland, is a mysterious human-made city, lit by neon lights and protected by thick pressure-resistant glass. A city filled with skyscrapers, huge artistic sculptures, as well as marine life that swim around these buildings. This place is known as Rapture, a world where humanity can thrive away from the rules of both the USSR and the US government. Rapture is a place where creatives, scientists, and business-minded individuals can do whatever they want without limitations. A paradise for those who seek independence and a new life. But what may look like a sunken magical world that is hard to believe really contains a world full of corruption, death, and inhumane experiments. In reality, Rapture is nothing but a cesspit for humanity's worst sins. But how did Rapture come to be? What was the reason for its creation? When was it first established? And how did it fall so dramatically and become a living hell? Well, in today's video we explore the origins of Rapture and how it fell into disrepair. This is the origin story of Bioshock's Rapture. To learn about the creation of Rapture, we first need to look at the origins of its creator. Born as Andrei Rainovsky in the country now known as Belarus, Andrei grew up in a Jewish Belarusian family that lived within a village near the city of Minsk. During his upbringing, Andrei experienced the effects of the Russian Revolution as well as the First World War, as the fronts of the Russian army were located just outside of Minsk. Whilst this was going on, Andrei's family also owned a very successful business that was known throughout the city. But when the revolution was in full force, and after the Tsar and his family were executed, the Bolsheviks took over power, and because of it destroyed Ryan's family business, stating it was not the way of the newly run Russia. His family protested this new government, seeing it as equally as corrupt as the Tsar's rule before. This led to the Bolsheviks hitting back at the Rainovsky family, and within months after the revolution, Andrei watched his aunt and uncle get executed as they opposed the new communist regime. Now losing the family business as well as his family members, Andrei and his father escaped to what we now call Istanbul, but back then was known as Constantinople within Turkey. This experience of the communist regime led to Andrei to come up with a personal philosophy, which he stated as being: the modern world was created by great men who strove to make it their own way. Anytime parasites gained control of such a world, they destroyed it. 2 years later, after the events of the revolution and downfall of his family's business, Andrei fled to America, as he believed it to be a place where one could prosper and become one of those great men he spoke so much about. With this move to America, Andrei also felt like it was time to change his name to something that didn't stand out so much. So Andrei Rainovsky turned into Andrew Ryan, a far more Christian anglicized name that would help him fit in with his new home. Ryan absolutely adored his newly adopted country in the first few years that he lived there. There was so much to see and do. There was opportunity at every turning, and because of his intellect, it was almost guaranteed that he was going to thrive in terms of business and be able to line his pockets and become that great man. During the late 1920s, Ryan became just that. He became very, very wealthy, as he was lucky enough to strike oil on his property. With this discovery, Ryan was able to set up his companies as well as invest in land and resources. He truly was living the American dream and loving every bit of it. However, moving into the 1930s, new legislation arrived. New state-run social programs entered the scene, meaning there was more of a distribution of wealth within all of the communities of America. Ryan was angered by these new programs, as he felt like they were very reminiscent of the workers' paradise mentality within Bolshevik-run Russia. Ryan absolutely despised all things socialist by this point, and these new policies were the same things he hated about the Bolsheviks. Ryan claimed that Roosevelt and his New Dealers were spoon-feeding Americans on the Bolshevik poison, and felt like everyone who benefited from the wealth of others were in fact parasites. During these new reforms, a large forest area in which Ryan owned was targeted to both the government and other organizations. One group told him the forest belonged to God and that he should donate it to the church to benefit them and set it up as a public park. The government also attempted to nationalize it as parkland, but once again Ryan was furious by these actions, and instead of giving it to these parasites, Ryan burnt the forest to the ground, denying it to anyone else. It was his or no one's. Ryan was despising everything around him during this time, and things did not get much better as America and the rest of the world went to war once again. The final straw for Ryan came in 1945 when America decided the only way to finally deal with the Japanese forces was to drop the atomic bomb on both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ryan saw this as the ultimate corruption of his ideas. It used the brilliant minds and determination of scientists and turned it into something that was just purely there for destruction. Ryan saw it as the parasites creating a form of destruction that could obliterate anything they could not gain themselves. After this event, Ryan had had enough. It was time to use his wealth and influence to get out of the country and set up a new life away from the so-called parasites who plagued the world around him. During the years where Ryan was falling out of love with America, he dreamed of setting up his perfect society, one that wasn't run by supposed parasites, one that would be a place for intellectually minded individuals to thrive away from all the rules of government. After the nuclear bombs hit Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Ryan used his influence to contact like-minded individuals about this new society he had always dreamed of. Ryan was, after all, an industry mogul and had made a fortune within America before he was being told by workers' unions and left-wing groups to give back to society. But clinging on to that money he had rightly owned, Ryan had invested in land, resources, and construction companies to create this new paradise that he would set up for his like-minded individuals and would go on to label it as Rapture. By the end of 1945, construction had begun. Ryan hired a series of different companies with the building work and specifically stated that he wanted it between the lands of Iceland and Greenland. Ryan and his crew, however, kept things completely secret from all governments as they did not want to attract any unwanted attention and end up having the construction controlled or ultimately shut down. The construction was unlike any before. Instead of building up, Ryan wanted to submerge the city to make it so no one knew of its existence, and it could be unlike anything anyone had experienced before. Here they utilized a giant platform called the Sinker to allow all of the materials below and be used as the base of the city. Deep sea welders and mechanics started piecing together the foundations as they put huge sinking pilings and girders deep into the ocean's rocks and silt. Huge buildings were made out of frames of aluminium, and all were designed with such detail to help them have an eloquence to them for their eventual residents. On the 5th of November 1946, Rapture was able to open its doors and some of its residents could finally move in, utilizing the lighthouse and bathysphere as the transport from the surface to the submerged city. But construction continued throughout the late 1940s, making Rapture the perfect dream city that Ryan had envisioned all those years ago. By 1951, Rapture was complete and it was exactly how Ryan pictured it. Residents had moved in, businesses had been set up, artists had begun capturing the city's neon beauty. Technology was reaching all new heights never seen before. Rapture truly was becoming a utopia, away from all the rules of the world above. Ryan had also made speeches about what Rapture's goals truly were, as well as statues to highlight the sole reason it was set up. Here he stated, "Rapture is a community where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small." The residents of Rapture loved their environment. They were free to do what they want, be as creative as possible, craft things that weren't ever deemed possible on the surface. And Ryan's true dream of a free society where man could prosper from their hard work without having to give it out to parasites was becoming a reality. No more Soviet rule, no more left-wing charities, no more parasites. Looking like the perfect world, a capitalist utopia, it felt like nothing could go wrong within Rapture. But almost immediately, cracks started to form and Rapture's almost idyllic society would begin to break down. Whilst it felt like things were going extremely well for the citizens of Rapture, deep down cracks were forming and some residents were seeing the bigger problems within Rapture as a whole. One of the main issues within Rapture was it was becoming the worst of capitalism. With individuals being encouraged to set up businesses, be creative and everything else, they were almost being told to reap every benefit possible. This led to Ryan and the rest of Rapture to basically start condoning things like greed, elitism, and exploitation. This instantly drove a wedge between the upper and the lower classes within Rapture, with the upper classes getting richer by the day and the lower class being more and more isolated by their greedy, arrogant bosses. There was a real divide in the streets. The lower classes were suffering, and because Rapture was built as a home where any socialist or charitable individuals would be labelled as parasites and banned from living there, residents were starving and dying due to this clear divide in finances. On top of that, Sophia Lang, a psychologist working with Ryan, also stated that a lot of residents were facing real mental health issues due to the sunless environment and isolated feel of the city. Because of this, the lower classes began to resent Ryan and everyone around him. This was not helped by Ryan's obsession with the idea that those who disagreed with him were parasites, and they were only looking to take everything he owned. With this paranoia building, Ryan took immediate action as he was worried that the parasites within Rapture would expose his utopia to the outside world. Immediately, Ryan made it a law that no one could contact the outside world, stating it was because of the Cold War, but realistically, it was to make sure his perfect world wasn't ruined by the governments he hated so much. Tensions died down during this point and Rapture began to thrive once again, albeit with some of the lower classes feeling really out of place. It was during this time where a new scientific product would be manufactured. Whilst in the docks of Rapture, Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum attended to an injured worker who had been bitten on the leg by a sea slug. During this, Tenenbaum discovered that after the bite, the dock worker's lifetime crippled hand had miraculously fully recovered. The slug had the power of healing unlike anything seen before. After researching the slugs, Tenenbaum realized the potential they had and their true healing ability through a chemical substance she called Adam. But the only way that Adam could really work effectively was if the sea slugs were placed inside the digestive system of the human body. But not just any body, it had to be young girls. Here experiments started and the sea slugs were placed into the little girls and then went on to be named the Little Sisters, causing some within Rapture to question the ethics behind these experiments. It was also discovered that when refining the Adam down, it could create a special serum called a plasmid, and if used with an actuating chemical called Eve, would go on to change the genetic code of humans, splicing in any new strands to allow humans to have new abilities never seen before. It is unsure when exactly plasmids went up for sale, but the first advert for one was a teleportation plasmid, which was conceived on the 16th of June 1948. Adam at first was revolutionary. It helped turn the citizens of Rapture into new advanced humans with abilities that would help them out in their everyday lives. Production thrived and industry was booming. Adam was really the best discovery humanity had ever made, but it was also a curse. Almost immediately after Adam went on sale to the masses, everyone who took it became heavily addicted to it. They had a dependency on it, as if it was one of the most addictive drugs ever seen before. Some could not function unless they had Adam and became desperate to find some, and if they did find some, they would go on to consume more and more each time, leading to horrific overdoses in some cases. During this time, a young businessman known as Frank Fontaine saw the business boom in Adam and wanted a part of it. He started smuggling goods from the surface, going behind Ryan's back, eventually gaining enough funds to set up his own Adam industry that would be the biggest ever seen in Rapture, called Fontaine Futuristics. This did not help the addiction to Adam, and the people began getting violent against one another, desperate to get just a drop of that new magical substance, as well as the plasmids that came with it. Fontaine's influence grew because of this, and this led him to becoming one of the biggest names within Rapture. Ryan always admired Frank Fontaine and in fact used him as an example of someone who prospered from Rapture. He was the poster boy for Ryan, the person he created Rapture for. But after the setup of his Fontaine Futuristics, Ryan started getting suspicious of Fontaine, believing him to be behind crimes within Rapture. Fontaine was influencing the working class through his criminal enterprise of smuggling, and he had also created a monopoly within the Adam industry, meaning a lot of the residents of Rapture looked up to Fontaine more than Ryan, simply because he supplied their drug of choice. Ryan couldn't have this criminal take over Rapture, so in 1958 Ryan attempted to arrest Fontaine for the crimes of smuggling and other things Ryan believed he had a part in. But Fontaine resisted arrest and because of it started a shootout with Ryan's forces. But Fontaine was hit in the shootout and was believed to be killed. Ryan didn't have to worry anymore about his biggest rival. The criminal enterprise of Fontaine was no more, or so he thought. Tension rose in Rapture again, mainly because of the Adam addiction within society. Another revolutionary individual appeared on the scene as well. A supposed Irishman under the name of Atlas rallied the masses of the working class, the ones who had been left out within Ryan's paradise. This terrified Ryan, and because of it, he had to get harsh on those standing against him. He introduced harsher laws to limit people's freedom and made sure to punish those who he deemed as problem citizens. On the 31st of December 1958, tensions reached their peak, and during a masquerade ball for the new year of 1959, a massive working class uprising was launched by Atlas, or as he's better known, Frank Fontaine in disguise. Attacks hit the Kashmir restaurant, one of the most idolized places for the upper class. This triggered an all-out civil war between Atlas and Ryan, and it wasn't helped by the fact that the Adam addiction was causing civilians to become vicious, hate-filled beasts. While standard weaponry was used for the most part, the civil war became more about plasmids and actually turned into a plasmid arms race, with troops on both sides trying to come up with new abilities to outdo their enemies. This would lead to the humans of Rapture going from regular soldiers fighting for a cause to drugged up monsters, only taking plasmids to become as powerful as anything. It was only a matter of time before humanity had become unrecognizable. The war would wage on for months with no real winner, only spliced up individuals killing each other over Adam, splices targeting little sisters, big daddies targeting splicers, machinery targeting anyone in their sight. The world of Rapture, once a glamorous utopia, had now turned into a war zone. But Fontaine had a plan to change this stalemate. Before the events of the Civil War, Ryan's illegitimate child under the name of Jack was sold as an embryo to Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum on behalf of Frank Fontaine without Ryan's knowledge. Fontaine saw Jack as his key to infiltrate Ryan's secret areas. Possessing Ryan's genetic structure, this would enable Jack to use everything Ryan could use, from his personal bathyspheres to his Vita chamber, which allowed him to be resurrected if killed in battle. During his upbringing, Jack was experimented on and was essentially brainwashed into becoming a slave for Fontaine, but he could only be activated once someone said the words, "Would you kindly?" After growing up as a child in Rapture, Jack was sent to the surface to live on a farm in Kansas, erasing his memory of living within Rapture. In 1960, however, Jack would get on a plane to go visit his cousins in England. This was all planned by Fontaine. On the gift, the words, "Would you kindly?" were seen. Jack, now activated, got out the gun which was in the gift and hijacked the plane, crashing it just near Rapture's location. It was now time for Jack to unknowingly come home and end the civil war Rapture had been plunged into for over a year. It was time to kill Andrew Ryan, leading to the ultimate collapse of Rapture once and for all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the origins of Rapture, how it was set up and how it fell leading up to the events of Bioshock 1. Did you enjoy this video? Did I get something wrong, or was it just simply okay? Let me know in the comments below. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'd hope you'd be interested in more Bioshock lore, as there is so much to cover, and it's really incredible stuff. If you want to support this channel, a like and sub would be much appreciated, but you can also follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and join my Discord. The links for those are in the description below. Also, you'll find my other playlists there if you want other game lore videos or some review videos. You can also support me financially if you really like the content through Patreon, YouTube membership, or as a Twitch sub. And speaking of, I'd like to thank my supporters real quick. Big thanks to Duquesne23, our Big Fish, our Sharks, JP, Connor and the AVP Man, and our 4 Megalodons, Sinus, Morgan Brazier, JJD896 and Wellsatch Gaming. Also a huge shout out to our Wise One YouTube channel members, Jambu and Ximurement X, as well as our awesome Twitch subs. Thank you all so much for your continued support. It honestly means the world to me. But that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.